Well, I'm now joined here in Oranmore by the Scottish Culture Secretary, Fiona Hyslop, Michael Moore, the Scottish Secretary, the former editor of the Scotsman newspaper, Iain Martin, and by the way, his book about the disgraced RBS bank chief, Fred Goodwin, is just out, and the Scottish singer and musician, Lou Hickey. She's part of the National Collective, a group of pro-independence artists. Well, Fiona Hyslop, a lot of people that I've been speaking to today say that their head says stay in the UK, their heart says go it alone. But the problem is, in these tough times, the head's got to prevail, hasn't it?
But the head argument, the strong argument of the economics, Scotland more than pays its own way, and the opportunity for Scotland. I think the argument then will come down to, can we afford not to become independent? But of course the main rational argument is democracy, and we need to make sure that people in Scotland make decisions about their own lives, and the best people to do that are people who work here in Scotland.
You can't promise that if people vote for independence they'd be better off, can you?
I think we can, in terms of the economic wealth we currently have. We already, as we know from the reports, more than pay our own way. In terms of, if you add oil in, we're probably something like 118% of the GDP of the UK. So currently we're in a very strong position. The problem is the people in Scotland who need it, the children, the families of Scotland, don't get to share in that. And that's, I think, the big argument about changing Scotland for the better, for families and for children living in poverty.
Well, I'm sure Michael Moore might have something to say about those figures, but you're all about making a hard-headed decision, aren't you?
Well, actually, I think we can deal with both arguments. I'm proud to be Scottish and I'm proud to be British, and I think people across the country will say, what's better for me, my family, for my community, for my country? And when they weigh that up, they'll take great comfort from the fact that a city like Glasgow has done so well by being part of the United Kingdom, trading internationally and still having a very positive future because it's part of the United Kingdom. I think we get the best of both worlds. We've got our own Scottish Parliament along the road in Edinburgh and still a strong voice at Westminster.
Well, Lou Hickey, musicians like yourself, you've got glamorous film stars and actors backing the independence campaign, and yet it hasn't really so far changed that much. It hasn't really enthused the public, has it?
I don't really think it needs to. I think at the end of the day, the strength of the Yes campaign is going to be the grassroots level. It's, again, everyone involved, regardless of their social status. It's to be inclusive because it's everyone's decision, it's everybody's country, and it's all our futures together.
Well, Iain Martin, what do you think about that? It doesn't need to be some kind of grand visionary campaign. Let's be honest, it's all about realpolitik, and, you know, the SNP know that they're not going to win this referendum, but they are going to get a bit more power.
Well, possibly they might get more political power. I mean, the cold, hard, practical political reality is that the SNP didn't really expect to be here, didn't expect to win the last Scottish Parliament elections, and didn't expect...
It's an accidental referendum.
It's an accidental referendum which is happening at a very, very difficult time, a time of austerity, difficulties in the European Union. I mean, what may well happen and might happen over the course of the next year is that it becomes as much an argument about yes-no as a discussion about what extra powers can be levered out of Westminster. And for that, the Nationalists, if they do want more powers and they want Devo Max or Devo Plus, they need a very big vote. They need to at least get close.
Well, it's lovely to see Iain again. I know he spent a lot of time in London, but he's probably not spent as much time here in Scotland.
And he doesn't get a vote, even though he was born in Scotland.
We definitely want to see independence. That's what we'll be campaigning for, and that's what the arguments will be out. And Scotland is very good at having discussions. And after the event, and after that yes vote, we will work with the rest of the UK and indeed our European partners to forge that way forward. But Glasgow has not benefited from the Union. You only have to look at the gaps between the rich and the poor, got wider under the Westminster system. And if you keep repeating the same old system, you're not going to change anything. People are open to see a change, particularly if we're to tackle the endemic poverty which exists in this city.
I think Fiona, as I accept, there are big divisions in a city like Glasgow and in other parts of the country, but I don't think that becoming a separate state is going to be the magic answer to all of that. We do need to look hard at what we do, but I think we do need to get more powers to the Scottish Parliament. As a Liberal Democrat, I'm very high, that's high on my agenda. But I do think that people see that we've got greater economic opportunity as part of the United Kingdom. They also see that we've got greater security. You know, Iain's just written a book about the collapse of one of Scotland's big banks. When that happened, the whole of the UK economy was there and able to support us. It was a great package, strength and security.
Let me just bring in Lou Hickey here, because there was an interesting poll recently that showed that for the first time more English people than Scots people wanted independence. What do you make of that?
Well, being that my best friend is English but now lives in Scotland, and she also agrees for it, but for her, her decision is she lives here, she wants better for the society that she's living in. That's why she's choosing to vote for independence.
Well, you live in England. What do you make of that?
I think some of it, really, let's be honest, comes down to straightforward boredom. The Scots, my fellow countrymen, have been going on about the Constitution for almost 40 years. And I think there's a point at which the English voter thinks, really, have you not gone already? But still, there's still a majority want the United Kingdom to stay together. There's absolutely no doubt. In the Olympics last year, there's absolutely no doubt the nationalists hated it, but Chris Hoy and Mo Farah were teammates under the same flag. It was a fantastic thing.
Isn't there also a sense in which some of the English want rid of the Scots because they see that per head the Scots get more public spending than the UK as a whole?
Well, that's one of the economic myths that we need to make sure over the next
head,
year.
that is absolutely
but we
spot on.
contribute more. So we've got 8.4% of the population, but we pay in 9.9% of the revenues and get 9.3 back.
Well, it depends how you do the figures, whether you include the oil revenues and so on.
Well, it does, and I think the recognition that in terms of oil, that's a bonus for us. Even without oil, we pay our own way, and that's the economic argument about the prospects and
But he refuses
opportunities.
to discuss the oil revenues, doesn't he?
The point about the oil revenues is that they are very volatile. I mean, I don't dispute that there's a lot more oil and gas in the North Sea, and that's a great source of wealth for the whole country for years to come, but it's getting harder to get out, and the price of it is very volatile. We can do that as part of the United Kingdom. If we do it on our own, it's too big a chunk of what we have to spend in this country. I don't think we need to take that risk.
But you have got a potential problem here, haven't you? Because there was a recent poll that showed that if the SNP could prove that people would be just £500 better off a year, they would vote for independence.
Look, I don't think this will be reduced to a 500 quid cheque here or there. I think people are going to weigh up a whole range of issues. They'll weigh up things about what happens in their communities. They'll think about their identity. But I think ultimately they're going to say, why do I need to change? I've got a great arrangement here where I get to do the important things on health and education and transport here in Scotland while still being part of this huge family of nations that is the United Kingdom.
Just to finish, just imagine in a year's time that we do have an independent Scotland. What you wish for. Just in a sentence or a few words, what does that mean, each of you?
Excitement about forging a progressive new nation to provide for families and to provide a future for our children that we can be proud of.
More than a few words.
The political equivalent of Scotland's defeat in Argentina in 1978, disaster for Scotland.
Opportunity.
Opportunity? That was very nice and brief.
It'll be different.
Michael Moore, Lou Hickey, Iain Martin and Fiona Hyslop, thank you very much for joining me.